Today's video is a walkthrough of the Stage 2 UBD rubric provided by the School Improvement Committee at Noblesville High School. To view today's video, you will need some helpful documents: the Stage 2 rubric designed by the School Improvement Committee, and a copy of Sample W, a social studies unit selected by the School Improvement Committee to serve as an effective exemplar of Stage 2 thinking. The Stage 2 rubric has three categories it will be reviewing in your Stage 2 work. That first criteria will be the authentic assessment itself. First, the assessment's authenticity is checked. The School Improvement Committee will consider how your assessment aligns to Stage 1 transfer, enduring understandings, and essential questions, if it meets the two-prong test of validity, how novel or new your performance is for students, how many facets of understanding are demanded of your students in the assessment, and how effectively your assessment follows the GRASP's model of authenticity. On the rubric, you will see that successfully completing each of these checks will earn an effective score. A sound Stage 2 assessment will be carefully aligned to Stage 1 transfer, enduring understandings, and essential questions. Will need students to have grasped core knowledge and skills in order to be successful on the assessment. Will be novel and new. Will solicit from students different facets of understanding, and will require students to adopt a voice that is not their own, that adapts to an audience that is not a teacher. On Sample W, our effective exemplar, let's first look back at Stage 1 briefly before we view its Stage 2 assessment. In Stage 1, the transfer in this history unit is for students to be engaged as civic-minded, informed citizens. This is a lofty transfer goal and promising. It can apply to many units. The enduring understandings and the essential questions tie back to it. Maybe not explicitly, but dig deeper and we can see the logic at work behind these enduring understandings and these essential questions. To understand how growth and change have impacted our country as a whole, we should consider how growth and change have affected our institutions as well as individual Americans. Students who achieve these understandings when they explore these questions. The result? Students not only become informed, but also invested in their own citizenship. In short, history matters because it's a story that matters to me, the individual student. But how do we measure civic engagement? This unit chooses to do a two-part performance: a multimedia presentation completed within a group setting as part of a mock historical exhibit, followed up by an individual reflection in the form of an essay. The authenticity check for alignment now begins. We begin at the top and identify the key elements of transfer: civic engagement and informed citizenry. Then we consider where these elements appear, either directly or indirectly, in the assessment itself. Sure enough, the transfer, which asks students to go beyond content and demands an application of their knowledge to become civically engaged, is found in the assessment. Students are required to use their historical research and skills for just such a larger purpose, bringing a historical exhibit to life for the wider public. Next, we consider how the enduring understandings and the essential questions embed themselves within the assessment. The process is the same. Identify key ideas in the Stage 1 elements and find their connection in the assessment. The emphasis in the enduring understandings is on growth and change and the role of the individual. We see in the assessment a direct link in the assessment's requirements. Students are directed to describe many transformations, change, and to explore the impact of these changes on the average American. Now on to the essential questions, where we repeat the process. Identify key ideas in the Stage 1 essential questions and find their analog in the Stage 2 assessment. In some cases, the essential questions could be overtly mentioned, as we see in this one, where the essay's topic is an exploration of the essential question. In other cases, the essential question itself may be transformed. The second and third essential questions here are explored through the aim of the group exhibit part of the assessment. With the two-prong test, this is where we consider how the core knowledge and skills are embedded within the assessment. We will check for alignment as we've done previously with transfer, enduring understandings, and essential questions. In the two-prong test, we ask two questions. Does a student need this core knowledge, underlined on the left, to successfully complete the assessment? Does a student need these skills, highlighted in blue on the right, to successfully complete the assessment? An alignment check verifies the validity of the assessment. The answer to both of these questions is yes. Students will need the core knowledge and the core skills to successfully complete the assessment. They won't be able to fake it. Clearly, we can see then that Stage 1 work is embedded in the Stage 2 assessment. From the transfer goal, to the enduring understandings, to the essential questions, to the core knowledge and skills, all of the Stage 1 work is driving the Stage 2 assessment like a well-oiled machine. The alignment check is done, and Exemplar W is effective in this category. On to the Novelty Check. The Novelty Check requires us to consider our assessment from the student's point of view. Is this performance or product a reordering of information I've already have? Is this just like other activities I've done before with just a different information I have to plug and chug in to get the right answer? If the answer to either of these questions is yes, then the assessment isn't novel. In the case of Exemplar W, Googling the question isn't going to help. They will have to apply their research and skills to accomplish the task they've set. Exemplar W goes above and beyond the call in its next check for the multiple facets of understanding. Not all assessments may have all 6 facets, but certainly they should have more than one, and a reasonable expectation is more than 2. Exemplar W has all 6. Some of them may be within the final product or performance itself, as we see with explanation, interpretation, perspective, and empathy. For application and self-knowledge, these facets are actually embedded in earlier parts of the project. The next check to consider is how well the assessment meets the GRASPS model. Exemplar W does this very well, with particular attention being paid here to role and to audience. Throughout the experience, students are thinking and practicing the habits of mind of historians and are crafting their message with a specific audience in mind who is not the teacher. A strong role and a strong sense of audience lends greater authenticity to this assessment. Having an assessment is not enough for Stage 2. Accompanying your performance task will be the evaluative criteria that you will use to measure how well your students perform on that assessment. In other words, the School Improvement Committee will need to see the rubrics you intend to use for this assessment. The submissions for Stage 2 work that the School Improvement Committee has seen so far have not had specific rubrics attached, but these rubrics have been cited. And so during the summer of 2014, many PLCs will be working on developing these rubrics. When PLCs complete this summer work, they will submit the rubrics with their assessments. On our Stage 2 rubric, we will be reviewing your assessment rubrics for their clarity and for the level of self-direction they provide students. Our Stage 2 rubric defines an effective rubric with two distinct markers. Students can explain the rubric with little or no prompting, and they can use this rubric to evaluate their own performance with some accuracy. Here is Sample W's rubric for the artifact panel that the students must create in a group setting for their exhibit. Notice how this rubric is easy to understand for students. Key questions are posed underneath each category, clarifying what the essential elements are for each category. This is a good practice. It prompts the kind of questions that should be asked when considering any criteria on any rubric. The language, too, is student-friendly. Not a lot of teacher-ease jargon here. Could it be made even more student-friendly? Absolutely. But it's a workable version for a junior in an American history class. The rubric is comprehensive too, connecting specific core skills like making logical, sound historical claims, providing evidence, and documenting sources to the demonstration. While specific content isn't mentioned, having content is required. Students who are trained to use this rubric could reasonably gauge where their product stands according to these criteria listed. The last category on our Stage 2 rubric is one called Other Assessments. In the Stage 2 UBD, other assessments include those more conventional tests, quizzes, and checks for understanding that we use to measure student progress in a UBD unit. When reviewing your Stage 2 work, the School Improvement Committee will consider the purpose, variety, and frequency of your other assessments. The School Improvement Committee will also consider how much self-reflection students are asked to do about their own learning. And finally, the School Improvement Committee will consider how well these assessments can predict success on the performance assessment. The Stage 2 rubric considers other assessments effective when they serve a clear function in the student's learning process, when they are varied in format, when they occur frequently, when they have students be reflective participants in their own learning, and when their sequence and scope lead to a high level of confidence in predicting the student's ultimate success on the performance assessment. In Sample W's Other Evidence entry, the assessments are clearly labeled with their function, from diagnostic, formative, to summative. While they aren't perfectly aligned from diagnostics to summative, see the last two, there is a logical sequence that certain steps in the process have to be done in a certain order. Storyboards clearly should come before exhibits. Pre-writings should come before essays. Variety, too, is implied within their titles. Graphic organizers such as charts, templates, and storyboards feature prominently here, but there are also open-ended responses like the visiting expert reports and even objective fact and note checks. By its very nature, the KWL chart listed at the beginning embeds self-reflection and learning. Considering all these assessments, can we predict that a student will be successful ultimately on the performance assessment? Because of their logical progression, their frequency, and their variety, there seems to be few, if any, gaps for students to fall through. So the answer to this question is yes. These other assessments do offer a high level of confidence that after students successfully complete these, they should do well on the performance assessment. Overall, Exemplar W presents a team's comprehensive grasp of the role that assessment plays in the UBD curricular framework. This exemplar shows clearly how assessment is aligned to measure the desired results identified in Stage 1, how assessment must involve an authentic demonstration of transfer, and how diagnostic and formative assessments, when frequently conducted, measure learning as a process and not solely as a product. This now concludes the video walkthrough of Stage 2 UBD Rubric. You can find other helpful materials at the locations listed here.